On behalf of North Clackamas Chamber, OCBA, Oregon City Chamber, and the Clackamas County Business Alliance, I'd like to welcome Congressman Schrader to the podium. And as you prepare your questions, we'll have somebody that'll go around and pick them up. So just raise them up in the air. I'll be collecting them, or we'll be collecting them, filtering through them, and then I'll be moderating the questions to Congressman Schrader at the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I'm a little under the weather, I will say that up front, so if I start gagging and hacking or lose my voice, I apologize up front. And I'll talk in a more moderate tone so that hopefully does not happen. Well, it's not as bad in Washington, D.C. as you see on TV. And as the majority leader said at one of the conferences in D.C., Steny Hoyer, good personal friend, majority leader from Maryland, been there forever. You know, there are more than 3 new members in the Democratic Party. You know, if you watch TV, you'd think there's only 3 members out there, but there's a lot of good members, and appreciate all the very kind comments by Ken and Laura and everybody. There are a lot of good members that try and work across the aisle, believe it or not. The big issue, and I think I've said this before to you all, is leadership or lack thereof. I don't mind a good campaign. That's fun. It gives me a chance to actually say what I'm really doing instead of having someone talk for me and maybe not quite getting it exactly right. So I enjoy that. But after you're done campaigning, you know, the real reason we're there in Washington, D.C. is to actually govern, right? The goal is to come up and solve some darn problems. That's what it's about. And I think people forget that. They think they're still campaigning after they've got elected. They're still proselytizing about this great idea or that great idea. But the real world is working men and women just want to be able to, you know, send their kids to school, keep a roof over their heads, have a great job, and enjoy the area they live in. And that should be our job. That's really our job. It's not to get out there and be the armchair quarterback on TV, on the blogs, or whatever it is. So that's where I go. I rarely will say very crazy things. My staff gets very upset when I say crazy things. But I think that with this whole problem solvers, no labels movement that I helped get going in D.C., there's a desire for more civil discourse. You know, it's fine to disagree. I mean, my brothers are both very, very hardcore conservative Republicans. You know, I'm a moderate Democrat, and we have great conversations. We can do that. We love each other. We get mad at each other from time to time. Well, how can you even think that, for gosh sakes, you know? You're supposed to be intelligent, Mark. And he says the same about me. But that's okay. But what I see here, unfortunately, the media, and frankly, a little bit of ourselves, we're propagating this idea there's only one view that's correct, mine. You know, and everyone's in favor of bipartisanship as long as you agree with me. You know, at the end of the day, bipartisanship means you agree with my point of view. And so we try and fight through that. And good news is there's been some improvements that way. At the end of last year and even the beginning of this year, with the appropriations process, that is the most important thing we do, right? Allocating your precious tax dollars to the various areas that you hopefully want us to do. And there's varieties, you know, some people don't want to do a lot on defense. Some people want to do it all in education and healthcare. And of course, the real world is this is a big country and we do a little bit of everything at the end of the day. And that's a process that is still actually very bipartisan. So when you hear that we can't get along, can't do this, can't do that, the most important function I'd suggest that we have is to actually allocate your tax dollars to the areas that hopefully you want us to pursue. And the good news is Republicans and Democrats, both in the House and I think in the Senate, try and get to yes. There are occasional kerfuffles like there was after we thought we had a great deal at the beginning of this year, but I think we're in good shape. And matter of fact, that same majority leader I referenced is pretty adamant that he wants to get these appropriation bills through Congress by at least through the House by the end of June, early July. And that would be like light speed in Congress speak. As you well know, rarely do we get budget done at all, and usually it's continuing resolution, and usually it's 6 months after you've already made the decision in your business life where you're going to put your money. So if we can do that, that would be huge. We actually have given there's 12 appropriations committees divided up obviously by subject areas, and we passed a bill, a rule a few weeks ago that give them the top line numbers they need to actually start doing that process. And that's actually reasonably early, considering the shutdown at the beginning of the year. That's actually reasonably early, and hopefully allow them to get that work done. And there's other areas. One of the first bills that came out of this particular Congress was a huge bipartisan public lands bill. I worked on several features of it. The big one for us in this little corner of the universe is getting the Malala River designated as wild and scenic for 22 miles. And I like that because we had the timber companies on board, we had the recreational community on board, we had law enforcement on board, we had the city of Malala on board. That's the kind of partnership we should be working with. That's how you get good legislation. You don't pick a winner, you don't pick a loser, you actually try and find ways to get to yes, where everyone gets a little help in the game. And I think a lot of these public lands bills are out there. Permanent reauthorization, if you're a conservationist, the Land and Conservation Water Fund. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. The oil and gas leases pay into this conservation fund where we do a lot of great work. OWEB and a lot of these organizations back here in Oregon get the benefit of having access to a lot of these funds. The Energy and Commerce Committee in particular, where I sit, has a storied history, if I may say, of being bipartisan. Greg Walden did a great job, in my opinion, in the last session, making sure we worked together. I think we had a record number of bipartisan bills get out. I think we had 65 opioid bills out of that committee that were a big deal. It's a crisis that's not just here in Oregon, but across the country, and enjoys wide bipartisan support. This year, we've already passed out, everyone campaigns, right, what I'm going to do for you, and do you ever deliver? One of the big issues that we've had, of course, has been the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs. And I'm all for making sure businesses have the right to innovate and do what they need to do. I'm not in favor of setting, arbitrary prices. A market will do that. But I do feel that there's a way to moderate some of the bad behaviors that we see occasionally that develop. And it's not, believe it or not, oftentimes by some of the bigger companies. It's some of the smaller companies that corner parts of the market and cause issues. Last year we passed, I passed actually the only bipartisan bill, actually the only bill, it was bipartisan, it was the only bill, that lowered prescription drug costs. We've got 6 bills that we passed out of subcommittee, full committee, going to the House floor just a couple weeks ago. No more pay for delay stuff, no more not giving samples so generic companies can develop their products, making sure the patents, you don't sit on your patent beyond the time you're supposed to. Just good basic business type stuff. This is, the rules get established, and, love the lawyers, love all you lawyers out there, but there's always a way to get around the rules, and then we have to write another damn law to hopefully get back to the original intent at the end of the day. But these were good bipartisan bills, and I just to give you a flavor, there were 6 bills coming out of the committee. Mine and several others had a Republican co-sponsor, so it was pretty, I thought, going to be pretty easy to get it through, and those were kind of no-brainers. Both sides of the aisle obviously got on board. And then there were 2 bills where, if you listen to the conversation, I try just to listen to the conversation. I find it interesting. Everyone agreed with the goal of the bill and what we were trying to do and how it was structured. The only difference was in the penalties. Are these guys horrible actors who want to really get after them? Are they guys that didn't understand the rules? Do we go retroactive to penalize these guys because of X, Y, and Z? And I thought to myself, Jesus, it'd be terrible for this committee that has such a good history to not be able to pass all these bills out bipartisan, not just the 4, but all 6. So I talked to the chairman of our committee, Frank Pallone, very liberal member from New Jersey, but a guy who likes to get to yes. It's not whether you're conservative or liberal or moderate. Are you willing to get to yes? Are you willing to respect the other person's point of view? And I said, geez, Frank, this would be terrible if these bills went to the full committee and didn't, have bipartisan support. I'd really hope we can work closely with Greg and some of the other folks on the other side of the aisle to make this happen. And to the staff's credit, staff makes you look good. Megan makes me look good. I really appreciate her, and make all of us look good, right, in our jobs. And staff worked really, really hard, and Frank and Greg worked very hard. Now those bills became bipartisan, at the end of the day. So there are folks that are really trying to get the work done, that are just doing what you elect them to do at the end of the day. Same committee, we had some health care bills trying to stabilize the marketplace. You've heard me preach a little bit about the problems we have in the individual marketplace with the Affordable Care Act. It's bleeding over into your businesses now at this point in time, and premiums are starting to go up for small businesses, as are the deductibles. In my opinion, the first step in getting control of the healthcare costs for everybody is to get that under control. Make sure that that individual marketplace works. It's only 10% of the marketplace, but it has an outsized resonant ripple effect when it's not working, and causes all of our private insurance to go up too. And there was good bipartisan support. We get wrapped around the axle on certain other issues that play into this, but I was talking to a couple of friends of mine on the other side of the aisle, one from Michigan, one from Illinois, and I think there's room for us to get to agreement on how to do that. We actually got a long ways in the last Congress on this very same issue. And healthcare, I think, is a big issue for Oregon, and it's a huge issue for small business. I remember back in my veterinary clinic when I thought I was being really nice, doing all the great things and giving my employees health care. That was when the Oregon Health Plan was starting, and things, thank you, were really, really good. Now it's become very expensive, and I think most every employer wants to do the right thing, but they want to be able to stay in business at the same time. And so this would be hopefully the beginning of that discussion. Last comment I'll make, then I want to answer questions. I'll make two comments. One, for those of you that are interested in how the country works, this session might be the beginning of Congress starting to step up and reassert itself. No matter how you feel about the executive, whether it's Barack Obama or Donald Trump, they are theoretically the executive branch, right? They don't run the country. Congress is in charge, or supposed to be. But we oftentimes cede that authority to the judicial branch or the executive branch. And when we had problems down at the border, Congress tried to step up and address those. And Republicans and Democrats worked through, what type of physical barriers we needed down there, what sort of family centers we needed, how to deal with what's going on. And it was interesting when the president disagreed, both Republicans and Democrats on both the Senate and House passed a resolution saying, sorry, Mr. President, respect you, but this is where we want to put the money for border security. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And not all get out of the personality. It's where Congress is starting to come back. We also had, in the House anyway, we had a huge vote. It's 435 members in the House of Representatives. And we had a vote, 420 yes votes. There were some present votes, but 420 yes votes out of 435 to make the Mueller report public for everybody. So it's not a partisan thing. Just let us know what's going on. It's kind of an Oregon thing, right? We just want to know what's going on. And I think that's good for the country. When you start to see those sorts of things, that's good for the country. Last thing I'll comment on briefly is transportation. To me, that's the real jobs package. We've done a lot of things, and they're good. The prescription drug thing, I think, is huge. We've passed some other bills I think are very good. To be honest with you, they play mostly to the Democratic base in my party. But they're good bills, in my opinion. But the big bill, I think, that I want to see that'll show whether or not this Congress, both sides of the aisle, are listening to you guys, is a transportation infrastructure package. That'll be the most important thing to do. I do feel that with the Democrats controlling the Senate and the Republicans controlling the House, there's a much better opportunity to have a real serious revenue discussion, because it all comes down to how you're going to pay for it. Everyone wants to build something that helps their community. I'm a big one. I-205 is my laser focus, Sunrise Corridor, but I want to make sure this stuff happens. but you have to pay for that at the end of the day. So stay tuned. Peter's working very, very hard. We're lucky we have Mr. DeFazio, obviously, as chair of that particular committee. I think hopefully come the end of May, we might start to see the outlines of our bill. We're playing heavily into that. I've met roundtable meetings with the leaders in Clackamas County and all the counties in my district, trying to get your guys' input where the priorities are so we can make the case as this bill comes forward and the appropriators start making their decisions. So stay tuned. Hopefully that'll be hopefully the signature thing we get done at the end. Stop there. Take questions. I've got a mic. I've got a mic. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, you have drawn an opponent in the primary. Do you feel you have been addressing the needs of the district? Are you too moderate?
Good question. The answer is absolutely yes. I think I'm addressing the needs of the district. I have been doing so for the last 10 years and enjoy doing that. I don't think you could be too moderate, to be honest with you. The question is, are you the right person for this district? This is not Portlandia. I love Portland, but this is not Portland. And some people forget that. I love this district. It represents, I think, microcosm of this great country. You got the Central Oregon coast. You got Polk County and Marion County. You got Clackamas County on the edge of Portland. It goes out into rural areas. It's got forests, fishing, agriculture, high tech, all sorts of great small businesses. And I think, to be honest with you, that's Kurt Schrader's stock and trade, and I've made a career in public service and trying to represent those folks. So I wish my opponent an interesting time.
Thank you for that answer. What are you doing to make sure Social Security and Medicare remains funded? Why do Congress have different retirement and medical funding?
That almost always comes up. That's good. As you saw recently, the actuary gives its update on the health of Social Security and Medicare, and both are okay right now, but they do face some shortfalls in the not too distant future. Medicare, I guess, in 2026, and Social Security in 2035. And it's like your problems in your businesses. The sooner you fix things that are coming down the pike, the less expensive, less traumatic it is to the people you're working with. We got close to doing that back when Obama and Boehner were negotiating, and then that fell apart because we couldn't agree on an inflationary factor. We couldn't agree on an inflationary factor for Social Security, and so would you rather have 25% cut in Social Security or change the increase that you usually get a little bit? It's pretty, to me, I'm just a little country veterinarian, but I can do a little bit of math, and it seemed like a pretty straightforward answer, but we had a huge issue with that, and on the other side of the aisle, they didn't want to do any revenues whatsoever. So we'll see. They're in good shape right now. We do need to start thinking about the future. Several of my colleagues have some good bills. I for one, think that it's ridiculous to not pay Social Security, Medicare taxes above a certain level. If you're making money, you should pay. But a lot of people don't know the system's already means tested. So there's a lot of things we can do that would improve some of the tweaks that we already have in the system to make it better. But it's going to be a combination of some tweaks and some revenues over the long haul. Peter, I know, has got an investment tax issue thing that he's working on and some others. So stay tuned on that. We actually do have pretty much, we have a retirement plan, same as you guys in your businesses. It's pretty good, but we still have to pay Social Security. We still pay Medicare, to be honest with you. The health care, we're on the exchanges, just like you guys. Congress is based out of D.C., so we're on the exchange based out of D.C. So we have the same wonderful health care or not so wonderful health care that you guys get if you're on the exchanges and don't have your own plan with your business or employer.
Fantastic questions. On infrastructure, water and wastewater are the biggest lifesavers. Will the bill be just transportation, or will it cover clean water as well?
It is a good question. That's the other $64,000 question we're grappling with. How broad do you make it? Depends how much money you can raise. That's really the bottom line. Washington, D.C. is not a supermajority like we have down in the state capitol here right now. So there's a lot of folks that don't want to put hardly any money into the system at all. I do feel that user fees have a lot of horsepower with both conservatives and progressives. So I think so on the transportation side, I see a path forward. I'm not so sure about the water infrastructure piece. Broadband's another one that's been talked about, rural broadband, trying to get out. That last mile is so critical. Was down in Independence the other day looking at MyNet as they try and expand and do good work down there. So that's one of those stay tuned things. I'm for whatever, again, as Laura alluded to and others, I'm a blue dog Democrat. I'd like to make sure that whatever definition of success when you're in a tough situation is stop digging the hole, right? You may not be able to move forward real easily and get that debt and deficit down, but at least stop digging the hole. And so, believe it or not, Democrats have pledged to go with PAYGO. So any new bill, any new great, brilliant idea we come up with, transportation included, we're going to have to pay for it at the end of the day. So it's going to be a little difficult. But I'd be for it. Let me put it that way. If we can come up with that, there's a discussion about spectrum with regard to broadband. There's a nexus between the spectrum sales and maybe funding a broadband package. I don't know about the same thing with the water and sewer infrastructure, but work with the chamber and others, maybe figure something out.
Are there discussions federally to lift the restrictions on federally insured banks working with small businesses in the cannabis industry?
My bankers come to visit me all the time on that issue, as well they should. I think we're making a little progress. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't know if it happens this session, but the Senate is moving in that direction. The Farm Bill included hemp and other things. We're moving, I think, slowly but surely. Cannabinoids are becoming medically well known for some of the medicinal benefits they have. Certainly, yours truly, Congressman Blumenauer, it's a big issue for him, kind of leading the charge for our state. But I think it's going to happen, just a question of when. I will put more effort into that, frankly, because I think time is well overdue. There's so many states now going down that path, and you just create, make honest citizens into criminals at the end of the day, and create a very unsafe environment with all this cash laying around.
This one is near and dear to my heart. What can you in Washington do to help move forward the redevelopment of the Willamette Falls heritage area and everything associated with the Legacy Project here in Oregon City?
Sure. Well, we're working, I'd like to think, hand in glove, with the commission and everybody that's put so much effort into this. That whole project, hopefully, when all is said and done, will create an economic hub for Clackamas County that'll rival the rest of our big dogs in Multnomah and Washington County. To me, this is a critical element that could really put Clackamas County on the map economically, not just from the tourism standpoint. And to be honest, and I've told everybody this, I'm more interested in the economic development aspects of this project, how this is going to grow this part of our great state in a great way, creating good family wage jobs. I think there's some tremendous opportunity. The group the Heritage Foundation group has done a great job. There's more people it's the old story. I've seen this in legislation where you cover all the bases, all the people that are engaged at that point in time come to agreement, and then some other people go, well, hey, what about me? I kind of like this idea too. And And certainly Shampooey and others should be included, French Prairie. They're trying to figure that out. We're working closely with your leadership to make sure that that all happens. As we get this put together, it will help us get you federal grant funds to actually help redevelop those falls, make them more accessible, and let people know the second largest waterfall by volume is here right for you to come visit and see, and it would be exciting, I think, to have that happen. So working very closely. We're also working excuse me, with the Corps of Engineers on the locks down there, see if we can make those functional. Like, that'd be a huge, we get that functional, that'd be huge for the economic development of this area. Everyone wants us to show the economic value first, and yes, I think we need to show what could happen, but I think once those things become operational, boy, we're going to see a resurgence of economic activity. You see it on the Columbia River. I mean, there's ways to use that river to great advantage, and I'd like to see that too. So we're working very closely with the community. Thank you guys. People in this room are very vested and very involved, and I really appreciate that.
And along those same lines, I wanted to share with this group, next month at our Oregon City Business Alliance Forum, we'll be doing an update on the public access through the Legacy Project called the Riverwalk. We recently received 2 grants, one for $5 million, one for $2 million from private individual trusts that are going towards that purpose to go ahead and start breaking ground, hopefully later this year, on the public access. So I think things are happening in that regard. Okay, can you please update us on the Secure Rural Schools timber payments to the 18 ONC counties?
Well, since we still don't have a viable timber policy in our public lands, yes, they are secure and safe. Senator Wyden, myself, and others in the delegation, and frankly other states too, benefit from Secure Rural Schools money. As long as we're not allowed to cut any timber in our federal forests, I expect the federal government has that obligation and would stand by that obligation to make sure we have the ability to fund our communities, fund our schools, fund our police and fire. At the end of the day, I would prefer to do some timber management. I was up at Skamania yesterday talking with some of the folks that live in these rural communities, and yeah, you don't have to live in the rural communities to see the smoke, ash, the horrible public health hazards, the carbon that's going into the air with these fires every year, and it's terrible that we don't want to manage these forests in a smart, productive way. Put people to work. You know, make that forest healthier, greener. Want Green New Deal? We got all of it all over Oregon, man. We've got a lot of green forests. Let's do it. So I think there's an opportunity that we're missing, and hopefully the discussion is starting to change a little bit. Governor Gavin Newsom down in California has streamlined a few timber plans down their way, how they go about production. So I'm hopeful I can reach out more than I have been able to in the past to our California colleagues and get a little support for actual active timber management. And hopefully a bill we did pass last Congress, you guys are probably aware, the fire borrowing fix. Remember that, where poor Forest Service spends half its budget fighting fires, so never gets to do all that forest management in the first place. So we actually passed a bill finally that treats forest fires as every other disaster, comes out of a disaster fund, not out of the Forest Service budget, which will allow them, hopefully in a couple of years, you know, I come here, it's funny, you pass a bill in D.C. and I come back and I talk to my bankers, hey, what do you think about that bill? And they go, what? You know, it takes several years, you know, before stuff rolls out and the regs are written and all that. So we passed the bill last session, but it'll be probably not till 2020. The Forest Service hopefully sees the money in their budget that they can then start to do some good forest management. And I'm going to be like a bird dog, making sure that that occurs at the end of the day.
All right, I'm going to try to consolidate 3 cards into 1 card, so listen carefully. Okay, the tax reform legislation passed by the previous Congress has, by assessments, put the country's financial system totally into the red. When and how will Congress fix our structural deficit and ensure the top 1% pay their fair share? And you stated some people don't like to put money into the system. Do you consider the vast federal taxes paid by citizens currently are still spent wisely? And what role does Congress have in addressing income wealth inequality?
All those nice softball questions. Please don't come to my town hall.
That wasn't everything on the card.
Yeah, well, then I thank you. Well, I'll be honest with you guys, I was not a big fan of the tax cut bill that Congress passed in the last session. Several reasons. First and foremost, it wasn't bipartisan. And that was sad, because I think there was an appetite on everyone's part to make our extremely complex tax code simpler. And I think for a lot of us, wanted to reduce the corporate rate. Corporate rate makes us uncompetitive internationally, and we're fighting all these companies wanting to move their headquarters overseas. Well, all these other companies, countries are reducing their rate. We have to do some of that too, and I would say put that money into, frankly, businesses and workers here in this country. They went too far. We've had several iterations of bills over the years I've been in Congress. And the only way to get the rates down to the levels that they did in this particular legislation was to add $2 trillion to the debt and deficit. As you know, our country was already in big trouble. Our debt deficit goes up every year. I think we had a $700 billion plus deficit last year. It's going to be $1 trillion plus this year. And we're on pace to spend more, to believe it or not. I may end up voting against some of the spending bills, just full disclosure here. But when you add $2 trillion to the debt deficit and you're worried about Social Security and Medicare, that's bullshit. I'm sorry, that's just wrong. No other way to say that. I gave my Freedom Caucus buddies a raft of grief because they came into Congress. They're all about how much debt and deficit we had, and they didn't walk their talk. They did not walk their talk. They just spent money like drunken sailors, and I really upset. That was one of the few low points I've had in serving this great country, to see that sort of thing go on. There may be a way to massage some out of the best. Here's the best part. I've had a ton of people come in since that bill was passed and say, hey, Kurt, there was a drafting error. Over here, they really didn't mean to cut out this particular benefit for me. And there's all this, yeah, they did. They cut all this stuff out, man. So that's how you got the rate down, dude. It's been very interesting to see the apologists come back in and have a slightly different view. But I do hope we do some adjustments, to be honest with you. I'd like to see small businesses have a long-term benefit. I mean, they did a little sleight of hand on us, guys. I mean, for all you small businessmen and women out there, hopefully you got a little benefit, with that 25% tax cut across the board. But, that goes away in 6-7 years. That's wrong. Why are we second-class citizens? I mean, I'm sorry. In my state, 98% of the businesses are small business. And we got some big ones, Intel, Nike, but we should, I think, have at least some long-term benefit out of this. So there may be some opportunity to talk about how we want to approach that, work with Ken and others about what do we want to do to, no bill's perfect. Affordable Care Act wasn't perfect. Maybe there's a way we can massage some of this so we get at what we were trying to do, and yet also make sure that small businesses and individuals have a long-term prospect of doing well at the same time. So again, I think we went the wrong way on that particular bill, but we'll work it, make it better.
Okay. You did an excellent job. I'll give you an easy one now. Do you think we should prohibit advertising of prescription drugs?
Well, I guess I'd be interested in how people view that. Again, my view is colored by the fact that I'm a veterinarian, and maybe they advertise they advertise a lot of stuff, believe it or not, on TV for pets, and I didn't object to that. I had a lot of clients come in talking to me about, hey, I saw X product on TV, and I really think that's probably what Fido needs. And I would, I love my clients, I love my patients, and I go, well, let's check that out. And we talk a little bit, and then it became crystal clear to me that Fido needed something different. So I would just tell the client we need something different, and my client would say, okay. It really wasn't that difficult, and so I'm. And maybe the medical community, it's different. maybe it's different. I have some doctors that want to limit advertising of stuff on TV. So I guess I'm open to that discussion, but to me it's basically a little bit of a First Amendment thing. You get to advertise what you're trying to sell, for goodness sakes, and I think it's incumbent on the health professional to have a relationship with your patient, your client, if you will, to let them know this is probably not the best thing because this, and this. And I think that's the better way to go. If I was king for a day, I think there's more things we can do in the prescription drug fund. Some sort of negotiation is going to be coming down the pike. We negotiate deals on every business thing we buy, for goodness sakes, and I think we're going to be doing the same thing with prescription drugs, probably at the federal level at some point in the near future.
This one's going to go back to sewer and water infrastructure. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, America's water and sewer infrastructure rates a D. What is Congress doing to invest in water infrastructure? And you free the Port of Portland from bondage as environmental cleanups move forward. How did you do this, and how has mitigation investment helped us in our communities?
I don't know about the last question. I'd have to sit down with whoever wrote that. I'll sit down with you on that last one a little bit. The WRDA budget, Water Resources and Development Act, is usually a very bipartisan, and it actually has always, in my tenure in Congress, been a bipartisan bill. Money is allocated, authorized, bipartisan. Apparently it's not enough. We're getting a D+, that's not very good. So there may be some opportunities to put a little more money into the system. I'd look to you guys for ideas where there's some sort of rational nexus between the improvement in the water quality system, the sewer and water system. That would be helpful for me, where I can make the case to my colleagues that this type of money makes sense going into this type of project. So any brilliant ideas you guys have out there, I'd be very open to move that down the line. With the Portland area, we're working closely with them, trying to make sure the Superfund stuff gets done in a timely and thoughtful manner. But there's a thoughtful way to go about it, and there's a not so thoughtful way to go about it. And I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but I'll sit down with you afterwards on that.
With the Oregon economy, agricultural economy, so dependent on migration labor, what is your feelings on the administration's policy towards immigration?
Well, it's not really very helpful right now. We have in my opinion, we have two different immigration problems. One is the classic historic immigration problem where folks want to come to this country to work, and for the most part, some want to stay, some want to go back home, but they want to earn a living here in this country. And it's more of a migratory population of folks, historically mostly men. We have a new problem down at the border where we have these families, women and children, coming from 3 countries apparently, at least that's what I hear for the most part. There's, I'm sure, some others, but 3 countries in Central America, and we're totally unprepared to deal with that. And there's no track record of legislation or discussion in the United States Congress on how to deal with that. And the most recent appropriations bills at the beginning of this year, we started to make a stab at that by putting money aside for facilities for these people could stay while we actually process them. Frankly, their Homeland Security's been underfunded, at least on the immigration side, so they just frankly don't have enough folks to process these people. And hence you've heard these stories where it takes years and years and years to actually get through the system if people are let loose in the country while that goes on. And you can argue whether that's good or bad, but I would argue it's best to do due process in a timely manner. So we did put some more money into getting more judges and more attorneys down there, excuse me, to help move through the system. The administration has not really staffed up a lot. We have a lot of positions still vacant in a variety of agencies, and that makes it a little bit more difficult also. But it's a top issue I hear from everyone in agriculture. I hear it from a lot of other small businesses too. We're full employment. And people, in my opinion, get wrapped around the axle on the wrong thing here. They're all worried about these people taking advantage of our system. Most of the folks I know are the hardest gall-darn workers I've ever seen. And they're just pleased to be here. They work really hard. They pay taxes. They pay Medicare and Social Security. Most of them aren't going to ever see that. They're back in Mexico or Central America or wherever at the end of the day. And if you're worried about Social Security and Medicare, we need people to work. That's who pays into the system so that we can enjoy the benefits. So it's astonishing to me that I have colleagues that I respect in the United States Congress that can't get there at all because they're all bent out of shape about immigrants coming to this country. Let's put an immigration system in place that we can be proud of, that actually allows people to come when we need them, keeps American jobs with Americans, but when there aren't enough Americans to do the work, other people can come in and help grow this country.
This one kind of ties into you being here today. Will Congress ever allow telecommuting for you to attend votes and committee meetings remotely so you can spend more time in your state with your constituents?
That's very interesting, very thoughtful. I don't know. Good question. I'll bring that up. We actually had an issue in the Democratic Party. We had a couple very revered members, older members, tenured members, that couldn't be at the caucus meetings where you have to vote for your leadership. And the rule is you have to be there physically to do it. And there was this person, one of the people actually had a real serious medical issue, and the decision was not to allow them to vote because they couldn't physically be there, trying to stay with that. So I don't know. There are the pluses and minuses, I'm sure, on that. I'll spin this in a different direction. One of the things we are working on, I think, has great promise, is telemedicine. That could be huge. I mean, as a little old veterinarian where I was always uncomfortable on a phone call trying to figure out whether Flicka was needing my services at 2 in the morning or not. Now with telemedicine, I could know pretty easily, yeah, I got to get out there. Or no, Flick is going to be fine till tomorrow morning, no emergency fee. Kurt gets a little sleep, it'll be all good at the end of the day. But I think telemedicine has huge opportunity going forward. Believe it or not, it has a problem in the budget. Telemedicine does not score according to the Congressional Budget Office in a positive way. It actually is a negative budget. And I don't get that. It seems to me to save a hell of a lot of money if a physician the specialist could look at someone's rash over the video conference and come up with some ideas for the local healthcare provider to treat. But somehow it scores badly, and we'll have to work on that to fix that. And the other, I'll bring up to the folks in D.C., see what they say.
Okay. As a follow-up to the question on immigration, putting aside illegal immigration and in light of limited housing, should we regulate immigration based on our capacity of housing and infrastructure to take care of it?
I probably wouldn't be in favor of going down that route. There are related issues, but as you all know, we have a tough time taking care of our own citizens right now, irrespective of the immigration issue. There is a push, given the toughening of the border. Border's more secure now than it ever has been, to be honest with you, just FYI. And many of our farmers, even in Oregon now, are looking to what they call the H-2A program, which is basically a contract with workers in this country and overseas that will provide housing. But it is specifically for them. So that should not take away from housing for American citizens that are down on their luck and having trouble, veterans, that are having trouble getting back into society. So I don't see that as a huge contradiction. I'll work with Paul and Martha and Ken and see what they say. But I'd be interested in what their their view would be on that too.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a spinner here at you. As a self-employed small businessman, one of my biggest fears is a trend towards socialism, especially when the leading Democratic candidates for president are promoting socialistic programs. How can we turn that tide? And were you on the phone call on Monday with the speaker? Is there an agreed upon direction about pursuing impeachment?
More easy questions. Thank you
I've been
very
saving
much.
those for the last. I want to make sure you got responses to the other questions before you left.
Well, let's see. Yeah, right. Thanks, Phil. Well, I'm a Democrat. I'm not a socialist. I'm a Democrat. I think most of my Republican colleagues are Republicans, not Freedom Caucus people. Everyone, this big country. Democratic Party is a big party. Got a little bigger in this last go around. And I assume that those people that are much more inclined towards that sort of philosophy represent their districts real well. And to the earlier question we had, I think I represent my district pretty darn well. And I think most of the districts in this country are in my vein, our district's vein, quite frankly, and want that sort of approach to things. I'm a little disappointed with some of the stuff I hear from some of the presidential candidates on the Democratic side. We have a new candidate that I could get behind that I think represents working men and women. And I think that's what we need to have. It'd be nice to have this editorial on my part, but we've had a couple presidents recently, you can argue, are well-intentioned or have their own view and whatever, but both are pretty inexperienced. I want someone that's got a little experience. I know that's not sexy, it's not cool. We want somebody that doesn't know anything and, that shake things up, and that's all, like my high-tech guys love that stuff. But I don't want that. I want someone that knows how to govern. My opening comments to you guys. I want someone that knows how to make the system work, knows how to work with both sides of the aisle, good with labor, good with business, can work with the far left, can work a little bit with the far right, moderate their enthusiasms. I will give Nancy Pelosi some credit. As you guys know, I was not a big fan of hers. Still have some reservations, but she has moderated the diversity in our caucus very well. And has kept a lot of the enthusiasms of some of my members at bay. And that's gone not unnoticed by me. That's conscious design on her part to say, that's very interesting, appreciate the fact you represent your district, but that's not where all the rest of these Democrats are. We represent a group across the country. The fact that Democrats control the House, that's not because of folks in New York City or Minnesota. That's because of the Kurt Schraders of the world, the Ben McAdams in Utah, the Kendra Horns in Oklahoma, the Joe Cunninghams in South Carolina. Those are folks that represent some of the diversity in our party. And I actually was feeling pretty sorry for my Republican colleagues the last couple of Congresses because they were very divided. They could not work together. They had a real trouble. And I think there's a conscious effort by, my leadership to not have that happen to the Democrats, if at all possible. It's okay to yell and scream, be excited and whatever, but at the end of the day, we're going to work more in the center area to make this country move forward. That's our plan, at least so far. Been successful so far.
We got one other good one, but we'll get through these others quickly. So what do you think?
Megan.
How do you feel about Senator Ron Wyden's proposal on tax on unrealized capital gains? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I actually haven't seen that. I have not seen that, so I'd have to study that to have an informed opinion. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
With homelessness so high, what can the federal government do to help people or help provide mental health services to the local communities?
Well, those two go hand in hand. You have to have places for people to live if you're going to treat mental health issues. It doesn't do any good to get people turned around when they don't have a good place to live. And the nice thing in our state with the coordinated care organizations that we've got, people are really being very good at understanding you got to treat these patients holistically. The whole next movement in our CCOs 2.0 is making sure it's value-based, making sure we deal with the mental health issues. It's really pretty exciting. And Congress is actually another great area of bipartisanship I alluded to, not just the opioid research, but we've done a lot of mental health funding. And we're actually changing. When I got to Congress, and actually just happening in the last couple of years, when I got there, it was pretty much a substance abuse department. That was our idea of mental health, substance abuse, addiction. And in the last couple of Congresses, we're trying to transform that department into a mental health department that would actually see these patients, these people, these Americans as whole people that have a variety of issues, not all substance abuse related. And even if it is, you got to go beyond that when you're trying to treat them. So, we're actually on top of that. We've been putting a lot of money into that. And hopefully it's part of a lot of the problems we see with people acting out outside around the country. So I think it's absolutely critical. The next stage in healthcare in America isn't, and I have trouble with some of my colleagues around the country, it's not just treating the condition the person walks in the door for. I got a cut, or I'm sick, I don't feel so good. It's about identifying that, taking care of that, and then saying, well, how'd you get there? Why are you stressed out? Is that how come you got sick? You've been sick here. I've seen you last 3 times in the last, 3 months, That, to me, is the next generation of healthcare, where you have that relationship with your doctor, your healthcare practitioner, where you can be very comfortable talking to him or her about any issue you have. And I tell you, again, this may be a bad example, but as a little old veterinarian, the biggest advances in the 30-plus years I saw in veterinary medicine wasn't in the cool drugs that came out that saved lives, wasn't in the great procedures, the IV therapies. The 2 most amazing things to this veterinarian was dental care and nutrition. I can make these dogs and cats eat what the hell they're supposed to eat, I could save cats with kidney failure just by feeding them food. I could save dogs with liver failure by feeding them food. I could give a dog another 2-3 years on lifespan by cleaning his teeth. Seems kind of like a wasteful, and I know you guys, oh, God dang, you charge too much. But it's amazing what you can do. And I think as we bring Healthcare 2.0 to the great state of Oregon and treat everyone more holistically, it's going to lower our costs long term. Our kids are not going to be as sick as our generation is as they get older, and it's going to be a much better situation for our country going forward.
Okay, and last but not least, and I don't even need a card to ask this question. With so many other Democrats entering into the race for president, do you want to use the Abernathy Center for your kickoff campaign?
Hell no. I wouldn't want that job for all the money in the world. I love what I do right now. Thank you. Thank you.